and welcome to the Indologia Podcast. This is a podcast for all matters Indic and an opportunity for me to answer a lot of these questions that you guys have sent to me. One of the most prominent questions that I've received over the last 7 to 10 days is about Israel. Because Israel में इस time इतना कुछ हो रहा है कि सब लोगों को जानना है कि what exactly is the matter, what exactly is the history. The good thing is that I have an idea of this, the history of this conflict from both the sides. Because as some of you do know, I used to be a left-leaning person not long ago. So it has given me the benefit of knowing this history from both the sides because I have read the books written by the people who are sympathetic to the Palestinians. And I've also read the books written by Jewish people. So having read both sides of the story, so to say, I'll try and summarize this whole situation quickly. So to get to the bottom of the story, we have to go back a couple of thousand years. Israel is the historical home of the Jewish people. But they were kicked out of the region by the Romans almost 2,000 years ago. The Jewish people then spread out in communities around Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, where once again they had to face discrimination. Israel since has been in the hands of a number of empires, but was most recently conquered by the Arabs. And because of all the discrimination that the Jews faced, many of the community long wanted to establish a Jewish state of Israel. And this is how the Zionist movement started. Jews started moving to modern-day Israel in increasing numbers in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, at which time the area was a British colony called Mandatory Palestine. And at that time it had an Arab-Muslim majority. Following the Second World War and the Holocaust, the Allies who won the war recognized that the Jewish people needed a Jewish state. So the United Nations drew up a plan to divide the British territory of Mandatory Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Jews accepted the plan, but the Palestinians rejected it, which of course triggered a civil war that happened in 1947. The Jews more or less won the war, taking most of the land in the former British colony of Mandatory Palestine, and as a result, many Palestinians ended up as refugees in surrounding countries like Jordan and Lebanon. As a consequence, many Jews were also expelled from countries in the Middle East and North Africa, most of whom, of course, moved to Israel. As expected, relations between Israel and its neighbors have remained very poor, and several wars have been fought between them, each of which Israel has won. In the Six-Day War of 1967, Israel took the West Bank, which was previously controlled by Jordan, and Gaza, which was previously controlled by Egypt. This essentially sets up a modern-day situation where Israel controls these two Palestinian regions, but hasn't annexed them. That means that the residents are not Israeli citizens and have their own government, but the Israeli military occupies their land. This situation has naturally led to a lot of tension between the two sides. The Palestinians want to have independence from Israel, but the Israelis don't want to give up the control of these areas for security reasons. Because there have been many terrorist attacks by the Palestinians over the years, which then prompts Israel to crack down on the Palestinians, which tends to further anger the Palestinians and cause more terrorist attacks, which Israel then responds to. It's basically a non-stop vicious cycle of destruction. And to add another layer of complexity, many Israelis see the West Bank and Gaza as being rightfully theirs, which then prompted many Israeli settlements to be built on the West Bank and Gaza, despite the fact that it's not technically Israeli territory. The settlements in Gaza are now gone because of how dangerous the region is, but there are many of them in West Bank, and they continue to be built over there. This has led to many Palestinians not being able to access or easily access many areas of the West Bank for security reasons, to keep the Israeli settlers safe from terrorist attacks. Plus, there are many security restrictions that make Palestinian lives difficult. All of this further raises the tensions. There have been many talks over the years to create a Palestinian state, but nothing has so far worked out, because most people on both the sides want the other party completely kicked out of the region. While the West Bank currently has somewhat of a moderate and functional government, Gaza is controlled by Hamas, which is a terrorist organization that likes to send rockets into Israel every so often, which always results in Israel bombing Gaza, Israel retaliating and bombing Gaza. The current right-wing Israeli government of Netanyahu would ideally like to see all the Arabs expelled from Israel and the Palestinian territories. But at the same time, there are many more layers and nuances that can be added to this whole mess. But here in this short segment, I wanted to give you guys a general gist of it. Two people claiming the same land and about 80 years of wars and conflict. Lots of distrust and bad blood, and as the recent events have shown, a peaceful resolution in the region is extremely unlikely in the near future. I also received a message from one of my followers who, in a very colorful language, accused me of being an Israel sympathizer, an Israel fanboy. And I thought that rather than just replying to him, I'll give a bigger reply to all of you, because I make a clear distinction between the sympathy that we must have for the Jewish people and the unwavering, unquestioning support that some people on this supposed right wing seem to have for Israel. Like, you'll never see me tweeting, "I stand with Israel" or hashtag whatever. Because for me, it's very clear that the political state of Israel, they've done things for us in the past. We have done things for them. It is a part of the geopolitical game. I am under no disillusions that Israel is some sort of a all-weather, all-knowing friend of ours, because everybody knows how much influence the Americans, the US, exerts over the Israelis. So to think that they will always be our friends is a bit foolhardy. But what I strongly feel for is the Jewish people. And that is why I give them my support. I feel bad for what they are going through. And I also feel that we as Indians can learn a lot from Israel, because they have suffered like us. So we can avoid their mistakes and learn from the strategies that they have adopted to fix their mistakes. While in India, we have a rich reservoir of dharma, sanskriti, and wisdom. But in my opinion, the Jews have a lot to teach us too. And that is why I hold a certain amount of admiration for them. For instance, look at the loyalty that the Jews have to this Jewish state. There was a story that I had posted last week where a anonymous Israeli man came to the airport in, I think it was in New York, and he came and spent $500,000 American dollars buying tickets for the Jews, for the American Jews who were going back to Israel to fight, to defend their land. It's incredible to me that all these Jewish people who are across the world feel such a strong sense of duty to go back to the homeland and fight against the enemy that is attacking their people. I even saw pictures of two cast members of the hit Netflix show Fauda, reported for military duty. And that's incredible. How many TV or film stars do you think in India would ever do such a thing? On top of that, you have Jews all over the world contributing money. Whatever is needed, they are sending back home. At the same time, the Jews who are in Israel, because they know that they've always been persecuted, that the world has refused to believe them, that they will need a very solid narrative. They have an incredible sense of building a narrative, which is why right after the attacks, you saw a lot of Jews on the streets making videos, taking pictures, documenting each and everything, because they knew that they are the perpetually persecuted people, that the world is going to ask them for proof, as has been proved, right? Because as you've seen in the last few days, the narrative has really been changed to make the Palestinians seem as victims. Another thing that struck me was the letter that some of the Harvard student bodies wrote supporting the Palestinians and Hamas. I believe it was 29 different student bodies who expressed their support. Immediately, a Jewish billionaire resigned from the board of the prestigious Kennedy School of Business. Another group of Jewish CEOs and CFOs publicly pledged that they will never hire any students who had expressed their support for Hamas. And as a result, today, all of those student bodies, all of the students who had signed their support to the Hamas terrorists have withdrawn their support. This is the impact of a united Jewish community. Can we say that the Indian Americans would do the same? And this is because the Jewish people know what they are dealing with. They have Swayambodh and Shatrubodh. They have no delusions whatsoever. Because the Jewish people have a long history of facing adversity, including long periods of persecution, discrimination, not to mention the Holocaust. These experiences have shaped a strong sense of historical identity and a commitment to the survival and security of the Jewish people. We also have a strong history of suffering, of persecution. But do we have this level of Swayambodh and Shatrubodh? You tell me. From their struggles, they have learned the value of resilience, perseverance, community, and solidarity. Do you think that the caste members of Fauda worry that by fighting Hamas, they will get cancelled? That people will talk bad things about them? No, because they know Israel is the only home they will ever have, and they go to any lengths to defend it. And once again, it is because the Jewish tradition places a strong emphasis on the remembrance of history, particularly the collective memory of horrible events like the Holocaust. This act of bearing witness and commemorating the past serves as a powerful tool of education, preventing the repetition of history's darkest chapters. In our case, it is the other way around. Our history has been written by invaders, and those who forget their real history suffer through it again. So to the person who messaged me, and to anybody else who has the same doubt, I ask you, is it really bad to learn from others to ensure your own survival? Because a smart person learns from his mistakes, but a truly wise person learns from the mistakes of others. Another message that I received, and I believe this person was a bit left-leaning, she said that, do you like Israel just because they fight a lot and they kill a certain group of people? Well, that is not true, and I can prove that by telling you the things that I admire about the Jewish people. The first thing that I admire about them is that they revived a practically dead language, Hebrew. There was a man by the name of Ben Yehuda who's said to be the man who revived Hebrew. His and his family spoke Hebrew at home. He promoted the use of Hebrew in everyday life. He even coined new words, adopted modern concepts, technologies for the promotion of Hebrew. After that, the Hebrew Language Academy was established to standardize the language and ensure its development. This institution regulates the Hebrew language, publishes dictionaries, and provides guidelines for its proper usage. Hebrew language education is an integral part of the Jewish society. It's taught in schools from an early age, and there is a very strong emphasis on language proficiency. New immigrants who move to Israel are encouraged, almost forced to learn Hebrew to integrate into the Israeli society. And the revival of this language was done through the literary scene. Authors wrote books about it. It was used all the time in the newspapers, radio, and the television. And as a result, the language became popular. The Israeli government has officially adopted Hebrew as the country's language. All official documents, signage, government communications are in Hebrew. On top of that, the Hebrew language was embraced by various cultural and social movements in Israel, such as the kibbutz movement and the Zionist ideology, which again emphasized the importance of a shared national language. Can you imagine how much we can learn from them when it comes to this? When it comes to the revival of Sanskrit as a national language of India? Another thing that I like about them is that every Jewish person in the world is considered a citizen of Israel. The law of return, enacted in 1950, grants Jews, as well as their non-Jewish family members, the right to immigrate to Israel and become citizens. This law defines a Jew as anyone born to a Jewish mother or somebody who's converted to Judaism. And this covers all the different denominations of Jews. Israel considers Jews, under this law, to be eligible for citizenship regardless of their country of origin, as long as they meet the criteria. This reflects their commitment to being a homeland for Jews. You'd certainly agree with me when I say that this is something that we can really learn from them. The third thing that I like about them is somewhat connected to this, is the effort that they made to get all the Jews around the world to the modern state of Israel. The Jewish immigration, which was called the Aliyah, has been a central part of Israel's history. They undertook so many secret missions, went through so much pain to ensure that no Jew was left behind. There was the Operation Magic Carpet in the late 40s and early 1950s, where almost 50,000 Jews from Yemen were airlifted to Israel in all secret operations. Can you imagine 50,000 Jews airlifted to Israel? And if you read up more about it, it was a whole lot of dramatic and daring rescue missions by the Israeli Secret Service. They also had the Operation Moses, Operation Solomon, when they rescued the Ethiopian Jews. Again, very daring missions, all of them. with the fall of the USSR, they ensured that no Jew was left behind. They got all of those guys to Israel. This is something that is fantastic. They are a self-proclaimed proud Jewish state, the only one in the world, and they make sure that nobody's left behind. Again, this is something that we really, really need to learn from them. And not just that, once the new immigrants are settled in the promised land of Israel, they give them housing assistance, they help them with learning the language, job placements, educational opportunities. Now compare this with what we do to the Hindus who are coming from Pakistan. Because unlike us, the Jews have Shatrubodh and Swayambodh. They know this is the only land that they will have, the only land that is safe for their own people. So they do their best to protect the land and protect their people. And we do have a lot of similarities with them. Both of us have suffered for many, many, many centuries. The verse number 5.82 of a certain Asmani Kitab wants to kill both of us, both the communities. And people who have suffered through the same tragedies tend to empathize with each other, tend to have a better understanding of each other. And I think that is one of the reasons why the Jewish people and the Hindus feel so much for each other. Even though many Hindus do not know much about Judaism, still there's a certain understanding that is felt on both the sides. Even though, and this has been asked to me also, that the Jewish people are also monotheistic people, they also are not very welcoming to other religions, then aren't you a hypocrite? That you criticize Christianity, you criticize Islam, but you don't say anything about the Jews. Why is that? Well, the reason for that is very simple. The Christians want to convert my people. They want to interfere in the politics of my country. The Muslims also want to convert us, or they want to kill us. They want to turn this country into an Islamic state. But the Jews don't want any of those things. They're not coming to convert me. They're not bribing and fooling and scamming Hindus into converting to their religion. They don't want to kill me. They don't want to kill my loved ones or turn my country into some sort of a land of the chosen ones. Why would I worry about them? In fact, so many Jews came and stayed in India where they were being persecuted. They came, they stayed with us, and once their promised land, the state of Israel, was made, they went back. They happily went back. In fact, if you go to the Holocaust Memorial, you'll see it's mentioned that the only land from which the Jews immigrated, from where they were not persecuted, was India. We have no problem with them, unlike some of the other communities who always want to interfere with us. A Hindu by default is accepting, is tolerant, is welcoming. The Jews have come to our country, the Parsis have come to our country. Anytime people have been prosecuted, including the Muslims and the Christians have come to our country, they have lived with us. We have no problem with anybody. We are the people who believe in Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Always lead to God. But when we are being challenged, when our existence is being challenged, when we are forced into things that are not in accordance with our Indic values, then do we not have a right to criticize them, to raise a stance against them? But that is besides the point. What I'm essentially trying to say is that we do not have a problem with the Jews because they are not coming to mess with us. We have no interest in a conflict with anybody who is not messing with us. We've always been people who've believed in defense rather than some sort of an expansionary attack. A Hindu person wants to live in peace and harmony with all his compatriots. He's very tolerant towards his Muslim and Christian countrymen and is happy to give them the right to their own way of worship. The problem starts when you start proclaiming 5 times a day that your God is the only God and none of the other gods deserve to be worshipped. The problem starts when you tell us that only the Son of God, who apparently died for our sins, can take us to some sort of a redemption. This is when the problem starts, when you make fun of our gods, when you insult our gods, our way of living, our methodology of praying, everything that the majority community truly believes in. And you do that openly. And once you are confronted, you pretend to be a victim. So I say this to all the left-leaning people who belong to other communities, that don't you see what the problem is? India is secular because India is Hindu. But when you keep poking a certain community again and again and again, don't you think that there's going to be some sort of a reaction and retaliation in self-defense? This section of the podcast is brought to you in association with myself, because I have no sponsors, so please go and follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Telegram, everywhere. The name is same, Indologia, Indologia. Another thing that happened last week was that the Pakistani cricket team is in India to play the World Cup matches, and they started by playing their matches in Hyderabad. And a lot of these clips went viral where there was a lot of support being provided to them by the members of a certain community who were in the audience. And there were chants of Pakistan Zindabad, Jeetega bhi jeetega, Pakistan jeetega, and all that. Of course, it is going to be controversial when such things happen in a country. And a lot of people on the social media immediately pointed fingers to a certain community saying that they cannot be loyal to India. The leftists and the Islamists frequently moan about how the majority of the country does not trust the second biggest majority, aka the Muslims, how Muslims are repeatedly asked to prove their loyalty to India, and so on. Now, it's a bit of a controversial topic, I know, but I want to delve into the psyche behind this belief and something that will perhaps make sense to the leftists and the Islamists if they were to listen to this very calmly. There are many reasons given for why India was partitioned, but people who were alive during that time and many historians who have since then written about it have stated that the real culprit of the partition were those who voted for the creation of Pakistan in the 1945-46 elections, and that these individuals should also be held responsible for the death of countless innocent people. So to understand this better, to understand this psyche, we have to analyze the 45-46 elections. Now, these elections had a unique feature. They had Muslim reserved seats where only Muslims could participate and vote. This meant that only Muslims could be elected representatives of these Muslim reserved seats. And such Muslim reserved seats were present all over the undivided India. Now, when the results came, the Muslim League, led by Jinnah, won all 30 of these Muslim reserved seats in the Central Assembly. Jinnah's party secured victories in what is now modern UP, Bengal, Assam, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. In those elections, now listen carefully, in those elections, 86.6% of Muslims voted for the Muslim League, which was running on the agenda of the creation of Pakistan, a new state for the Muslims of undivided India because they could not live with the Hindus. Prominent members of the Muslim League won elections all over the country, from Bombay to Lucknow to Meerut to southern parts of India. Now, these are the same Muslim League leaders who would, in a short time, be the founding fathers and pioneers of the new state of Pakistan. In provincial assemblies as well, around 90% of Muslims voted for the Muslim League, and the League established its presence in all states of present-day India. Now, notice carefully, I'm saying present-day India. The League established its presence in all states of present-day India. So it can be safely said that a vast majority, an overwhelming majority of Muslims of India wanted the creation of a new country for Muslims, and they wanted to go and live there. But how many really went there? In 1947, approximately 4.25 to 4.5 crores of Muslims lived in the Indian subcontinent. Out of these, only 72 lakh Muslims migrated to Pakistan. About 3.5 crore Muslims chose to stay back in India after voting for the creation of Pakistan. It is surprising that the areas where the Muslim League won the elections were not the areas from which the Muslims migrated to Pakistan. Almost 75% of the Muslims who migrated to Pakistan were from Punjab, the worst affected area. If you look at the 1951 census of Pakistan, the Muslims who migrated from different states of India were from Punjab, 50.5 lakh, Bengal, Bihar and Orissa, 7 lakhs, Uttar Pradesh and Delhi, 4.65 lakhs. From Rajasthan, 2.35 lakhs went. From Maharashtra and Gujarat, 1.6 lakhs went. From Bhopal and Hyderabad, 95,000 Muslims went. And from Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Karnataka, only 18,000 went. This is why, if you recall the famous speech of Sardar Patel, I think it was in January of 1948 when he asked, what changed? He asked the Muslims of India, what changed? You voted for Pakistan, you really wanted a state of your own, you wanted to go there. What changed that now that you're staying back? This is one of the reasons why there is so much of a trust deficiency between the biggest majority of the country and the second biggest majority. Because this is the question that is still alive in the psyche of the Hindus, that you wanted your piece of land, we gave it to you, and you did not go. What changed? And In my personal opinion, from whatever history that I have read of that time, this is one of the reasons of this lack of trust. A couple of weeks ago, I had posted a story on my Instagram. It was from an article by the Hindustan Times, in which it was mentioned that the Indian intelligence chief had told the CIA director that the only reason why they had not eliminated G.S. Pannu, yes, the same G.S. Pannu who's the head honcho of the fake Khalistan movement, they said the only reason they did not eliminate him is because they knew that he was a CIA agent. Now, when I posted this, a lot of people were very surprised because we've always been told that this Khalistani movement is a Pakistani project. But of course, as anybody who has been in this game for a while knows, it is a CIA game. And the reference that I have pulled out for this is from a book by B. Raman called The Cowboys of RNAW. It is a book about what the Pakistanis called Ra. And I'm going to read out a passage from the book for you. It says, before the outbreak of the war in December 1971, the RNAW, on the instructions of Indira Gandhi, had started a Psy-war campaign to highlight the violation of the human rights of the people of East Pakistan and the resulting refugee exodus into India. The CIA and the ISI sought to encounter this by starting a Psy-war campaign on the alleged violation of the human rights of the Sikhs in India and the indifferent attitude of the government of India to the problems of the Sikhs living abroad. Chauhan visited New York and met the local media and the others in order to brief them on the Khalistan movement. These meetings were discreetly arranged by some members of the staff of the U.S. National Security Council Secretariat, then headed by Dr. Henry Kissinger. On October the 13th, 1971, he had an advertisement published in the New York Times proclaiming the beginning of a movement for an independent Sikh state. Inquiries made by the RNAW indicated that the Pakistani embassy in Washington, D.C. had paid for these advertisements. This Psy-war campaign against India and Indira Gandhi on the question of the alleged violation of the human rights of the Sikhs continued till 1977. As you can see from this book excerpt, it is very clearly the Khalistani movement, so-called movement, is very clearly a CIA operation. Pakistan is probably just, as always, the middleman. Take the money from USA, get some stuff done. That's what they always do. That's how they run the country. Always have, and they probably always will if, Daddy USA lets them have a little bit of a handout. So, my friends, I think this is it for this episode. Speaking for 30 minutes nonstop is a little more difficult than I thought it would be, but I shall be back with another episode for you next week. But hey, if you're still listening to this, send me a message because I want to thank you, and give me your feedback, send me your messages, send me your questions. I'll take all of them up in the next episodes. And hey, if you send me good messages, I'm going to read them out on the air because this is going to be my new main channel of communication. I need to get my voice heard, the Hindu voice heard, and I'm going to try my best to get these out every single week. Also, if you are not following me, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Telegram, WhatsApp. I'm all over the place. Till the next time I see you, Jai Hind and Vande Mataram.